This is the Amp Hour Podcast. Released January 3rd, 2021. Episode 524. LEDs and EVs with Mike Harrison.
Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog.
And I'm Chris Gamble of Contextual Electronics.
And I'm Mike Harrison from Mike's Electric Stuff again.
Yeah, welcome back, Mike.
Hey, Mike. Just in time for 2020.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, 2021. Actually, this will be released in the new year, guys. This is our final recording of 2020. Yeah, this is a New Year episode.
We're talking in the future.
Oh, well, everything will be normal when this is released. So
guys, we fixed it.
Well, I think the Oxford vaccine's going to be approved any day now here, so and they've already made about quite a lot of million doses of it. So, but it's still going to take a long time to.
Yeah,
it's going to get worse before it gets better. Certainly in the UK after Christmas.
Yeah, same here. Unfortunately,
but even then, I suspect it's not going to be a magic bullet. So
no, it's going to take time.
Yeah, it's Anyway, how you been, Mike?
Yeah, what you been up to?
It's been a while.
Bit sort of busy and not busy in equal measure, sort of few jobs happening. Everything just died around March, but things have started to started happening again, more lead boards but there's a bit of a lack of motivation as well.
Right. Yeah. From
Especially
a self-employed contractor point of view, when everything dried up like that, did you think, oh crap, I better start actively
the phones.
doing something, I don't know, designing a product, doing something to...
Well, I mean, not financially, but maybe in terms of keeping myself occupied, yes. But it's really, the motivation wasn't really there, so I still haven't quite finished doing my kitchen. I bought most of the stuff I needed to finish it just before lockdown, and all the wooden floor stuff is still on the shelf, and a few tiles got slapped on the wall, but not a lot else.
Yeah. I mean, is that the kind of thing, like when you are not doing like other people's jobs, do you have back burner projects that are in electronics that you're doing?
Yeah, obviously there's YouTube stuff. I've just in the process of designing a new product where I basically had a few inquiries for a very similar thing from about 3 different past customers and potential customers within about a week, which is a high channel count dimmer for AC LEDs, AC mains LEDs, like little things like GU10 bulbs and mains LED tape and so on. And there isn't really anything on the market at the moment aimed at low power. You can get these massive dimmer racks for stage lighting with 1 kilowatt per channel, but so I'm working on an 8 channel and a 16 channel, sort of about 250 milliamps per channel sort of mains dimmer.
Oh, that's good.
Actually, I might do a video on it. Actually, there's some quite interesting design challenges.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you do like a chopper where you cut off the top of the waveform?
Basically
a triac control thing?
Well, no, it's LED bulbs like trailing edge dimming rather than the leading edge dimming that you get with triacs. So basically, you use a pair of back-to-back series MOSFETs as the switching element. And that presents a few interesting challenges when you want a lot of them, because if you imagine you've got 2 N-channel MOSFETs in inverse sort of series, you've got the 2 sources connected together, and that is your reference point for your drive signal. But of course, that is flying up and down with the mains, and each channel is completely different. So effectively, you need to generate, for each channel, a completely floating voltage source.
Oh,
without transformers,
for each
probably, right?
channel. Ouch.
Yes, so I was starting to think this through in my head. I'll use a 16-channel PWM chip on the main side. Before I realised this issue about the reference for each channel is completely independent. But I then found this. I mean, I started looking at photovoltaic opto-isolators, but they're a little bit slow if you want to get a reasonable resolution for the turn-off time. It's not so much they're slow, it's their turn-off time is not very well specified. So you're going to expect quite a big channel-to-channel variation and variation with temperature, phase of the moon, whatever. But I found this absolutely brilliant chip from Scilabs. This is Chip of the Week, folks.
Chip of the Week.
SI8751, which basically it's one of these capacitive isolation devices.
Oh yeah, because that's how they do all their isolation, right? When they're doing like a SPI bus isolator, whatever, they do capacitive, right?
The neat thing is that it also uses some voodoo that I don't quite understand to shove about 20 microamps at 10 volts across the isolation barrier. So it will directly drive these MOSFETs with literally all you need to make a fully isolated switch is 2 MOSFETs in this chip, and that's it. That's all you need.
And there's no like coil in there for doing the power?
So you don't need some secondary side power?
Exactly. And that is the beauty of it. So, and they're not expensive. They're like a bit over £1 or something each. So, and they're in SO8. So, 16 of these I'm using SOT23. I found some SOT23 MOSFETs that are rated at about 12 amps, which I don't entirely believe, but they seem to be fairly robust.
Right. That's the great thing about using MOSFETs is that they don't need much drive.
Yeah.
So, apart from if you're driving fast with the
but you're not. This is 100 hertz, and all I care about is a reasonably consistent turn-off time because that obviously affects the actual brightness. I've bought a couple of other trailing edge dimmers just on AliExpress and another one just to see how everyone else does it. And they've all got like an individual one, those little brick DC-DC converters, like the little 1 watt, little black jobbies per channel, plus an opto isolator. Okay. So, once you start wanting to get 16 of those into a reasonable space, that gets a bit messy.
Could you explain the trailing edge versus leading edge too? I've never heard those terms before.
Okay, if a traditional triac dimmer, it waits for the zero crossing in the mains, then waits for a while, and then turns it on after a delay, and then turns the load on for the rest of that cycle. Because the triac, when you trigger it, it latches on, and it only turns off when the current through it falls to zero. And that's how light dimmers for like the last several decades have worked.
Yeah.
But LED. Mains LED bulbs, the dimmable ones, and they are fairly specific, much prefer a trailing edge where you turn it on at the start of the zero crossing and you then turn it off at some point through the cycle. And it's to do with the architecture of the way that the LED lamps work, in that they have to both generate the drive for the LED, but also sense what the phase angle is so they can actually dim it, because they generally are like a switch mode power supply with some sensing to measure the phase angle and then dim the LED based on that. So you've got some capacitive load on them. That's one of the issues with the leading edge dimmer. You've got the front end of the switch mode power supply, which is a rectifier and an electrolytic capacitor. So if you turn that on halfway through the cycle, you get quite a high current surge. And it generally, if you look inside virtually any sort of conventional light dimmer, you'll see there's a fairly big choke in there just to reduce this rise time when the thing turns on. Whereas with a trailing edge, sometimes it's called a phase cut dimmer instead of trailing edge. But of course, you're turning on at the zero crossing point. So your turn on is nice and slow as it goes up the sine wave. And it's only the turn off that's quick, which is generally less of a problem. Although I did find, I did encounter, you learn everything on every job you did. I was running this into a test. I was 16 channels into like this massive big pile of metal lab resistors. I was using a test load. So I was putting about 4 amps through this thing. And I was running it through an isolating transformer and a variac. And what would happen is, as I turned the mains voltage up, suddenly I'm using like one of these little PCB mounted mains power supplies just to generate all the internal main stuff. And at some point, this thing would pop. Yeah, literally, it'll blow the capacitor out. This is on the incoming. Yeah, this wasn't my output switching devices that were blowing. It was the mains power supply in this thing. I thought, what on earth is going on here? So I eventually put a scope on the incoming mains. Of course, what happens is I've got this 4 amp, basically 1 kilowatt load being switched off rather quickly, and it's coming from the secondary of a transformer, which of course is somewhat inductive. So I was getting this 800 volt spike that was just annihilating the power supply. So I've learned, if you're doing trailing edge dimmers, either don't use a transformer or just stick a few microfarads of capacitance on the output of that transformer, just to it wasn't a particularly wide spike, but it was just the amplitude. It was enough to cause sort of quite serious mayhem.
Well, it's like Christmas season, and British people love Christmas poppers, right? So it's just your power supply doing that, right?
So it's clamping on the solution there is either stop it from doing that, or clamp the primary side mains, but you're not clamping it because of incoming lightning strikes. You're clamping it because of
this isn't something that's going to be an issue in the final product. It's just because I was bench testing it on a variac or an isolation transformer.
Right, okay.
So my solution is you just stick a bit of load on that transformer, and the problem goes away.
That's great.
It's because it literally had no load at all, except this 4 amps that was suddenly switching off within, 100 microseconds or something, and it didn't end well.
So, I was going to say, this chip has 2 Hiller clamp pins. Can you explain what they do? It's like
I don't know. I don't really understand what those did. I just ignored those and it seemed to work.
right, okay, right. Because it says that it provides clamping to prevent unintended turn on of the external FET you're driving. So
yeah, I read through it and concluded that it wasn't an issue, and I haven't really paid much attention. I was originally looking into this about a couple of months ago, so I've forgotten what those did now.
Right.
Is this meant for like? This is meant for like motor driving, huh? Is that
It's
like
designed for any solid state switching application, and it's one of those chips that's.
It's just designed for driving MOSFETs, right? It pretty much doesn't do anything else.
And unless you can think of another application for generating a high voltage isolated 20 microamp supply,
right.
But it does exactly what it needs. It does exactly the right job. And in fact, they even do a version that's got an input that emulates a LED, so you can use it as a drop-in opto coupler substitute. But this I was using CMOS one,
I
and
see
then
that. Yeah. Right.
That's obviously just designed for someone that's trying to update an existing design.
How the hell do they do it though? Like, I
don't know.
It's like, I mean, this has got to have so it has like DC isolation, right? I mean, it's got to have that if it's doing.
Well, they're using
capacitor
whatever, right? Isolation. They have like tens of picofarads of capacitance in there, like large physical capacitors in there. I don't know if they actually have them on the die. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like it's a polyamide or some kind of filler, right? I mean, that's usually how these things work.
I must stick one in the X-ray machine and have a look. But I think they just blast some RF across a capacitor in such a way that they can get the DC on the other side.
Yeah.
But it works, it works and it's affordable. So the only annoying thing is it's in a 0.15 inch SO package rather than a wide one. So the tracking distance isn't quite what you'd like. But because
you thought they'd put in a widey, wouldn't you? And then you could get larger capacitors in there as well.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about, but because of the way I've done it, because I think they say it offers basic rather than reinforced insulation. I'm actually doing a second isolation, but I'm using this is a DMX controlled dimmer, so I'm using an isolated DMX receiver. So I've actually got two completely separate isolation barriers.
Nice.
Just to you can never have too much isolation. Although I'm sure there's something somewhere that would, like a static or something, it could kill you if you're not careful. Have everything floating relative to everything else. But
so you're saying each channel could be as much as, I mean, they could be as much as 5 kilovolts apart, right? Or I guess RMS.
No,
right?
no. I mean they're all coming from the same live feed, but because each channel is individually controlled, the reference point for your MOSFET, which is basically halfway between your supply and your load, could be flying all over the place separately per channel. So you need to have that separate reference for the MOSFET drive for each channel. And so if you're doing like a 1 or 2 channel dimmer, it's not a big deal. But when you're trying to do 16, it all gets a bit cumbersome. You don't really want to have 16 DC to DC converters. And so the couple I've looked at, one uses, I think it was a 4 channel, it used 4 separate DC to DCs, and another one, I think it was a 3 channel that actually had a custom switch mode supply with multiple secondary windings on the transformer. But again, that doesn't really scale very well.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, that's great. That's a great project.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's great. Does anyone make an equivalent one or
not that I'm aware of? The only thing that's similar is the photovoltaic opto isolators, and they tend to be a bit expensive and a bit slow. I didn't look at that. I found this before I'd exhausted all the photovoltaic ones I started looking at.
Wait. Did you find that via the DigiKeys and the mouses, the component suppliers, or did you go to trawl in the manufacturer sites?
I can't actually remember how I came across it. I think I was just Googling, in my desperation when I realised this reference issue and that the PV isolators weren't really giving me an answer, I was maybe looking at solid state relay schematics or whatever, and I just somehow found it. I can't remember exactly how. And then there's that moment where you find the absolute ideal chip, and then you nervously say, A, is it available? B, is it affordable?
Oh, it's sold out in the entire world. Yes.
Speaking of which, have you had any, because you're a manufacturer, you're your own manufacturer.
Very small scale.
Yeah. Anyway, but still.
Boutique
and,
manufacturer, Mike.
Boutique manufacturer. And have you had any supply problems? Because I've been hit with supply problems, manufacturers of my products. So
no, but I've not really done any manufacturing this year to any serious degree. What supply problems have you been seeing?
I'm not sure of the exact parts, but I've had multimeter delays from several manufacturers.
Yeah.
And they're citing, the market is just like sometimes we're going back to the 1990s of your 40 week lead times and stuff. Apparently,
I've had a little bit of it. Like one thing that was particularly telling was I was doing some pressure sensing stuff. I think I maybe mentioned on the show, but I was doing pressure sensing, and it's just like it's impossible to get anything except anything outside of like just barometric sensors. If you need any kind of like anything that's in the realm of say a ventilator, it's impossible to get a sensor.
I wonder how much of that is people speculatively buying.
Yes,
I think you're right. I mean, and like lead times were out like 3 months just to get like DigiKey single sample type things, and finally I found some on Arrow. But like, it's just everybody's racing to catch up, and I think they finally are, honestly. But it's just there's certain things in there, and then others, like crystals will just be completely wiped out, or just like weird
who uses
stuff.
Crystals these days, MEMS oscillators.
I mean,
it's crystal rubbish.
Yeah, right.
Oh, they're still going to kill them on price, aren't they?
I mean, I'm really just following app notes here, guys. So like whatever's in the app note. And
is there any driving need to move towards MEMS though? I mean, what's fundamentally wrong with crystals apart from any vibrational shock issues?
Yeah, last time I looked, they're smaller and cheaper.
Oh, okay.
If you just want just like a bog standard 25 megahertz oscillator, you can get something in a I think they're in like little square packages from Microchip for less than a crystal oscillator. Mm-hmm. More than a crystal, but less than a crystal oscillator.
Yeah. Right, and we're talking about a packaged oscillator, not just an element.
Yeah, the oscillator. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you even get MEMS ones that would simulate a crystal? Like, so you could. Sorry.
Not as far as I know, because I think the MEMS ones they do like on factory calibration, and they've got like factory programmable divides. I think Microchip actually do ones that you can actually get a programmer, so you buy these things in blank and program that to whatever frequency you want.
Yep, and your burner it's just a one-time programmable thing.
I think so. Yeah,
I assume so, because you wouldn't really need it to be in system programmable. Yeah.
So I have a feeling it might even be that DigiKey or some distributors actually program them to order some of these MEMS. I don't know whether it's the Microchip one specifically, but there's a few manufacturers that do them, and I think certainly some of them they're basically programmed to when you order them, which makes sense, right? Yeah, because oscillators are so many different frequencies. It doesn't make sense to. You've got issues like packaging and tape and reel and stuff for small quantities. It makes sense for the distributor.
And it's a stock problem too. Like, you don't want to have to carry, 8 megahertz and 10 megahertz and 12 megahertz and et cetera, 12.2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
See, if they're really smart, though, they would have just the one stock, like, generic type. And then what they do is they, like, survey the market and see what the biggest need is and then just charge more for that. And then they're just putting on the programmer anyways, It's like, oh, you need 8 megahertz. Oh, well, sorry. That's $30.
That's oddball, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think in terms of supply, I think obviously there's been other issues. There's been factories closed, and I think SGS Thompson have had strikes in their factories. And was it AKM? They had their factory burned down, and so
who's AKM?
They make audio A to Ds and D to As. They're fairly niche,
right?
But if you use that niche, you're probably pretty much screwed. I think.
Right.
When I had that news, I did a search on DigiKey for all the AKM parts, and there was like almost zero stock of anything.
Lead time is whenever we get around to building the new factory. Yeah.
That's the disadvantage of using the boutique part. If the factory burns down, the workers go on strike, or that country's embargoed or something, you're up the proverbial brown creek.
You're screwed.
So,
Well, you said the LED stuff is so. Give us the state of LEDs, Mike. I mean, come on, that's your bread and butter, right? So what's up? What's new in that realm these days?
Nothing really new. I finally actually got a job where I'm using my custom wants to use the WS2812 type devices, which I've resisted for a long time based on just quality. But it's their problem. If these things die, then that's not my problem.
Why did they insist on that? Is because they've heard about it every cost? No.
Cost.
Right.
It's just cost. I think this particular project is fairly tight on cost because, I mean, quite a lot of the stuff I've been doing over the last year or two has been literally getting TI drivers and, brand name LEDs and sticking on a board where, in theory, if someone made some decent quality, dependable LEDs with built-in drivers, then we'd use those. But all there is the race to the bottom Chinese stuff, which in the past I've had issues with in various issues, and to the point I certainly wouldn't trust them.
Do you ever have to do like proving it out to your customer and be like, I did an accelerated life test on this certain type of part, and be like, no, that's crap, or is it just more anecdotal?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, we don't, most of these are one-off projects. We have a finite amount of time to get this project done, one opportunity to build it. So we don't have the time to do the live testing and all that sort of stuff. We just need to build something that we know is going to work with a very high degree of confidence.
So you got to do the testing and then sell the report, like just be like the Mike Harrison White Wing LED report.
Yes, and charge $10,000. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, like that report that Dave and I talked about a couple weeks ago or months ago, right? Those things that's big money, man. So like, and you're the name.
Copies,
so.
The problem is you spend 2 months doing your accelerated live testing, and your report says these are crap. You don't want to use them, and where are you then?
Disqualified.
Did your customer actually do the technical stuff to actually vet that's the product that's the lead that they wanted to use, or did you?
No, I'd not.
They just said cost, and you went, oh geez, we have to use these.
Yeah, I'm not sure about. I'm not really sure of the whole process. All they said is, here we'll send you.
So they had already picked them
that we want to use to test
through some process you're not aware of.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I don't know what. Yeah, these are. I think they're RGBW ones, but again, I say fine, and if the LEDs die, it's not. All I said to them is make sure it's easy to replace them if you need to.
Like some kind of like eject socket or something. You push a little button, they all pop out, and you put new ones in. Hire the intern to just push them in.
No, not quite. Yeah, we're talking. We're talking like the tape, the ready-made tape stuff. So assemble it in such a way that you can just pull a whole strip out, plug another one in relatively easily without dismantling the entire installation.
Would a socket exist? Would there be an exotic socket for?
No, I mean we're talking lead tape rather than individual devices. I mean the socket would, if you with individual sockets, the socket would cost more than the device.
Oh yeah, no, of course, of course it would,
and add even more points of failure as well.
That's right, but there might be some niche requirement out there that needs a socket or something. But geez,
How often is stuff coming to you? Like so the WS2812 is a good example, right? I mean, it's like people there's lots of great prototyping kind of examples out there. People, same kind of things happen with Arduino or other type of like example things that are out there that people can prototype with, and then they come to you and they say, "Here's the answer." And is it usually cost-based then, or is it more like,
Yeah, it depends on the customer. I mean, I certainly in the past I've had basically someone that's prototyped something on Arduino and then wants to scale it. It's the classic. One of these days I've been meaning to sort of do a video or something saying Arduino does not scale. Okay, we've baked these things with sort of 200 LEDs. Okay, this installation uses 20,000, and things like power. Power management is the first thing, and bandwidth and so on. But the customer I do most of my work for at the moment is that they are a lot better in getting me involved earlier. They understand a lot of the issues a lot better.
Right, like knowing where the value lies, and someone like you of like making it a hardy system, making it like reliable, making and manufacturable. Those are all important things.
And by saying Arduino doesn't scale is not, you got to qualify that by saying it doesn't scale in this particular scenario when you want to drive 10,000 LEDs. It's not that you can't take an Arduino design and then repackage it cheaply, because you can do that. Because it's open source, you just strip back the micro and program. It's when you want to expand the whole system, so to speak. So,
that's a very sort of overarching statement of it's I say it doesn't happen so much nowadays, but certainly in the past, they say, okay, we've got this thing prototype, we know it's going to work, and we now want to make like another. Or it might even be something as simple as they've lashed something up with off-the-shelf things, and they want to make 200 of them, and don't understand that it's going to be much easier to stick everything on one PCB and sort out all the connectors and everything than get 100 Arduinos and put cables everywhere and do all this sort of.
If you just wire from here to here 4 times for each board and make sure the wires are really good, it's just like oh god no.
Yeah. Actually, that phrase when you said really good. One thing I told a customer a while ago, I can't remember which project it was, but it was something which it was a fairly large. It's like a hang on the wall artwork, and they came up with this potential way of putting it together, which included the words very, very carefully. I think it was to do with gluing something. And I said, look, any instruction that includes the words very carefully, no, just no. Because, you might care about it, but the intern you've got working over for the college holidays isn't going to care about it as much as you do, and they're not going to take as much care as you do.
Yeah, but it works for like a Mars rover and stuff. Assemble very, very carefully. That's this one device that you're going to.
Yeah, but the people assembling it very carefully have probably been trained for several years as to exactly what very careful means.
Oh boy. Can we put the photo for this one? Can we put like that famous satellite in the clean room that fell over? You know,
fell over. Oh my god! Yeah.
Love that one. I've got to trot that one out again in 2020. It's like, yeah. It was like a weather satellite or something, and they did a tilt. They wanted to tilt it, and somebody forgot to put the bolts on. If you haven't seen the photo, it's just
That reminds me, the photo hasn't come out yet, but you may have seen that tweet from Daniel from Keysight saying apparently a forklift went through a $100,000 oscilloscope or something.
Really?
There isn't a photo yet.
So it was on a pallet or something? It was in the box on a pallet?
The tweet was something like, so apparently a forklift went through the side of an $100,000 UXR oscilloscope, and that was it. And everyone retweeted pictures so it doesn't happen. He said, I'm working on it.
I'm going to get on that.
That's got to be like a public safety campaign at that point of like, friends don't let friends drive forklifts.
Oh, that's great. Boy. All right. Should we go through our list?
Sure.
Well,
sort of.
We didn't send it to you.
What we talked about before.
This is like top of the list, which is I posted a link. I can't remember where I got it from, but anyway, it's from the China Law blog, and they're talking about how the title is it's perfectly legal for your Chinese manufacturer to copy your products. End of story. Unless you have a really in-depth binding, don't copy our shit clause in your contract. But most of the time you're not going to have.
Oh man!
But unless you're Apple or somebody, you're not going to have a dedicated contract for a manufacturer or something. You're
targeting
just going to
different
go
areas
this, please. Unless you're like a big player with a legal team.
Yeah, that's true. But unless you're Apple, what are the chances of the Chinese companies actually going to want to copy your widget? I think it is a bit of a clickbaity title in that basically it just says most of it really you need to do slightly different things than you might do with other companies, like using it was not an NDA, it's something else they called it, and register a Chinese trademark and a few other things. But I think that was probably a little bit on the
it is. I know they're not going to want to copy
it's probably
your
true, but
Arduino widget or something. But if it's got publicity behind it, like it's a big Kickstarter or something like that, there's been many articles over the years where these Kickstarters, they've got in $10 million and everything, and they go to the Chinese manufacturer because they need to assemble it cheap, and they all of a sudden find that it's on the market before they can even release it because the manufacturer's just
the classic Kickstarter Kickstarter AliExpress syndrome.
So
although I'm not sure how many times that's actually happened. I know it has happened, but I'm not sure how common it is in practice.
I've seen it a handful of times in the Kickstarter realm, so but it tends to happen to the big ones. They're not going to bother to copy some little tin pot Arduino thing with 1,000 backers. It's just
right. And I think at that point too, the people that are trying to get it cheaper in the first place are like, all right, great, don't have to do manufacturing now. Great, awesome. That's usually wherever the profit motive is. It's like if it's like just trying to get a thing out there, that's different than trying to make it a business or make it a a future thing. I think as well.
It is a clickbaity title, I agree, but it's worth keeping in the back of your mind that
I think
this is a thing.
This
I was thinking about this the other day with it's very normal for me to now send off Gerbers to just whomever, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be a China board house, whatever.
Think about it.
But it's really just like floating out there, right? And these are things that I'm under NDA for. It's not like I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm not doing anything, but it's just IP that I'm doing for a client, whatever. But it's it's out there, and there's very little likelihood that anyone would ever do it. But it's just a weird thought to think like, oh, I just kind of float this thing onto the internet, and then a couple weeks later, I get fiberglass back. It's just like it's just a weird concept sometimes to think about that.
Got to be careful.
Yeah, but it's just a board layout. I mean, if they want to copy it, they'll just strip all the bits off and scan the board, and they've got it anyway.
Yeah, it comes down to how much you want to focus on it, right? I mean, like how much you want to, if the bomb's there, if the layout, the schematics there, whatever. It's like, I don't know.
But from an IP point of view, Chris, with your clients, you've got to be careful, because if you get it made by some of these low-cost PCB manufacturers, they will actually default your actual design becomes public. I can't remember. There's a couple of the board houses out there that, if you use your low-cost assembly service, you basically sign away rights that they can make this public or something. I can't remember. Is it Easy EDA or somebody? It's one of those, it's one of these houses.
You're saying it's like one of the marketplace solution type of things where like,
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, it automatically defaults to public or something unless you choose their higher price service. So it just, once again,
bad.
something to be conscious of.
Yeah, but that's not unique to Chinese. There's a story from a guy that in the UK that I spoke to a few years ago. He was doing boards which were like fairly artistic PCBs. You can probably guess what I'm talking about. I won't name him. Like very artistic sort of PCBs. And he had a commission from, it was something like a fashion brand, like the sort of people that really care about keeping things under wraps. And he sent this to a UK PCB manufacturer, and who shall remain nameless, but I think anyone that's used them will know who I'm talking about. And
because
they
it looks
a
so
of it.
novel and nice. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Yes.
Oops.
That's not good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you've got to be careful about, like, I've had lots of companies approach me and say, oh, look, you've reviewed our product. Can we put you as a case study on our marketing website? Can we tweet out you're our case study? And it's like, no. It's like, yeah. Oh, boy. And they asked, at least they asked, so but my end result is public, of course, with the video, which they can, they're free to post, but not put, not plaster me all over their, story page or whatever, it's like,
yeah, because then it's like an endorsement at that point too.
Yeah, it's like an endorsement, like he chooses to use our service, it's like, like, holy shit,
chose with your wallet.
So.
Yeah, at least I'm sort of very fortunate. None of my stuff it's rarely confidential, and certainly once it's out there and been installed, I can talk about it. All my customers care about is this thing works, and they're not really interested in the IP side of things, which is quite useful.
Have you had any at all that have said, no, we don't want any, this is our secret source, we don't want anyone to know, or and you can't reuse this tech in anything else?
No, I mean, no, I literally, the world that I've been working in recently, nothing has ever come remotely close to that. Probably the closest I've had was a customer that just wanted to have enough to be able to rebuild spares if they ever needed to. This was actually for museums, and the museum had a policy sort of anything like that. They needed to have all the information. They needed to like do repairs themselves, or if necessary, get new hardware built. But that's really been it. None of my customers have ever really been interested in owning any of the IP that I've generated in achieving what their vision was.
Right, because I've got a story of a company who shall remain nameless, who had 2 employees at the time, and they were working on a product. And
is it your company, Dave? Is that what we're talking about?
No. And they did a Kickstarter, and one of the employees' former employers saw the Kickstarter and just so happened to have a very similar product also kickstarting at the same time by pure coincidence. Just happened to
like
enter that same market.
Or like they said it was pure coincidence?
Well, anyway, this company had been working on it for years, actually longer than this other company. So it was like, anyway, so this the former employer of this person started to contact them and say, you've stolen our IP. How dare you? You're reusing, geez, we want you to tell them to stop releasing this product. And it's like, nah, not going to happen. It's like, because there was no IP stolen at all. It was simply just a similar product in a similar market on Kickstarter at the same time. It's just one of those coincidences. But they took it as this employee had stolen, was reusing their knowledge or their IP code possibly from that. Yeah. So, It happens.
Yeah, I mean, when it gets to lawyers at that point too, it's like, man, that's a tough thing to prove, but it's expensive for everyone.
Game over.
It's a mess.
Oh no, it wouldn't have gone to that. It would have been
more than your Kickstarter profits will probably cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Kickstarter profits.
It would have been a public battle at 10 paces. It would have been.
Yeah, right.
Twitter at 10 paces.
Yeah. Right.
Oh boy, but yeah, those sort of things happen. So yeah.
Yeah. Are you, Mike? Are you still pick 32? Is that still your part of choice these days?
Yep. Yeah. Used another different pick 32 in this dimmer, doing sort of 16 PWM channels, all bit bashed in software, using some like 50% interrupt loading, but it does the job. It's not going to do anything else. So why not?
Are they updating that line at all though? I mean, like what are they doing with that?
Yeah, this is a newer. I mean, I tend to just notice new ones when I've just come across something that I run out of steam. So I don't actually know how new this device is, but I just needed something that had 64 pins and had sort of interrupt shadow registers. So I looked at it, and this one was like a slightly newer version of their PIC 32mm range, and it does the job fine. No errata to speak. It actually, pure chance, a feature that I did really late on. One of the issues, obviously, with mains dimmers is it's rather difficult to protect them against short circuits because you get rather high fault currents. So what I decided to do, well, this thing has got a fuse in it, but obviously the MOSFET would blow to protect the fuse in most cases.
So a lot of people would have missed that joke there.
Hall effect. But you can get these neat isolated Hall effect current sensing chips. It's like an SO8 with like an internal shunt. It's like a 0.5 milliohm shunt or something, but it uses a Hall effect sensing. So you can get the one I'm using. It's got like a plus minus 10 amp range. So what I wanted to do is have this, so as soon as it detects an overcurrent during the cycle, it would immediately cut the drive, so that if you turn the thing on into a dead short, as the current starts rising through from the zero crossing up the half cycle, it will actually turn off fast enough to not smoke the MOSFET. So basically, the output from this current shunt it's quite nice. It's fully isolated. You get like 0 to 3.3 volts is your minus 10 to plus 10 amp range. So what I want to do is basically feed this in so that if I detect the current going over a certain amount, it will instantly cut off the outputs. One really neat feature this chip has got, it's got a thresholding A to D converter. So it's got a comparator as well, but obviously because it's an AC signal, you want to sense both the positive and the negative half cycle. So what you want is a signal that will tell you, is this voltage either higher than X or lower than X minus something, if it's outside that range. Because the output of the current sensor is centered around half your supply rails. It's centered around 1.65 volts, and then it goes higher or lower than that as your AC current increases. And one neat feature this chip has got is it's got an AC converter where you can actually give it two limits, and it will set a flag if the voltage goes outside those two limits, which is exactly what I wanted. And I only really discovered that after I designed this chip in and decided to put the current sensing in later, which is another just one of those really nice bonus, little sort of serendipitous things. Because I probably could have done it with a comparator, but like every half cycle I'd have had to switch the polarity, and it would have got quite messy. But it just happened to have this exact function that was just absolutely perfect. Okay, so it took a while to figure out how to configure it to actually do it, but once I configured it, it worked fine. But now I'm still a fairly major PIC fan.
Have you had any clients demand that you use a certain processor? No, don't care.
No, they don't care. My clients want a box that they plug data in and get pretty lights out the other end. It could have a valve in there for all they care.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious in general too about just from your perspective, what you're hearing. Obviously, Microchip owns Atmel now too, and just a lot of their portfolio is legacy based, right? It's not like PIC's going away anytime soon. But I'm always just curious about are they putting resources towards new families and stuff like that? It sounds like there is new stuff coming out that you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I only tend to start looking when I have a requirement that needs something. Most of my stuff isn't particularly demanding, so I've occasionally glanced and see some interesting stuff. I don't know how they compare with other things. I'm sort of fairly glad that I didn't go the STM32 route, because apparently they're the ones that are hitting supply problems at the moment quite badly. But one other nice thing is one of my customers have actually got people in-house that can do low-level software and so on. one of the nice things about PIC is that the whole dev tool thing is that I can just give them one project. They just install MPLabX, load my project, and they're away. I just write them a little framework, and they just add their code to generate their content, and off they go. They don't have to spend ages diffing about with different tools.
You want to install Eclipse, but make sure it's the right version of Eclipse, and then also here's all the plugins you need to get. Make sure those are perfect, and your Ubuntu's up to date.
Oh, I've got that famous video. I got that famous video of David too installing the like an hour just video just to install the tools used for the app development and of the the app development of the 121 multimeter. So it was like there were so many different tools to install. It's like
exactly.
It's like the extreme end of what can happen when you do that sort of thing. Otherwise, it could have been done. Sorry, no, it was just the firmware. No, sorry, it was just the firmware. It was the firmware for the power supply. Just firmware for a ST micro.
Yeah, but he was doing C++ and weird stuff too, right?
Oh, he was doing C++, but it could have been done. But the point is, it could have been done, as Mike's saying, just in the vendor package, and that's it. It's not as nice from a software development, if you're a software development aficionado, right? It's not as nice, but as Mike said, there's advantages. You can just go, here's the package file, open MPLab or open ST tools, and that's it. It's I
don't know, guys.
Done.
So here's the thing. Here's what I spent some of my week last week doing was installing onto a VM. Simplicity Studio, which is the Scilab's tool for like all their firmware. They migrate. They now have a version 4 and a version 5 with an upgrade path, and it was like, okay, I'm gonna go install all this stuff onto a VM so that it's like locked down forever, because I'm just worried it's just not gonna work at some point in the future, and it's like a client project. So that is the downside. I think is like I think that Microchip's been pretty good about compatibility across time, but I'm pretty nervous about that sort of stuff for myself because
I was. Yeah. Well, kind of surprised and not surprised. When I did my 1024th video, I took, because it was 1024, it was 1K, right? So I took an old PIC micro assembler code from like 25 years ago, right? That I wrote, and I reassembled it, or I installed the latest MPLab. It was for a 16 F84 or whatever. I pasted the assembler code in, and I hit assemble, and it worked. And I programmed my chip, and it just worked. Like 25 years later, it was like fantastic.
Yeah,
but that worked because the F84 is still a popular chip. You know what I mean? Like it's like
it's still. I think the
bigger
chip,
concern is if the chip becomes unpopular, right? And so if I'm using a part that's unpopular, obviously that's on me, but like that's probably the bigger risk, I think, in terms of future compatibility and stuff like that.
There's often I can remember when I developed on that 16F84, but in production, I actually used the cheaper at the time because, those newfangled flash parts are expensive, right? So I used the 16C61, right? So I used the one-time programmable 61 version for my production boards, and it was changing a couple of like bits in the fuse bits or whatever, and that was it. Like it really was very minimal change. So and I just completely changed the chip. It was completely pin compatible, and boom, so I just used a different chip.
Microchip have been fairly good, and certainly in terms of dev tools, there's only been one really major change when they went over to MPLabX. And it's a bit of work taking an old MPLab project, but a lot of that's just down to which libraries get included by default and stuff like that. And in terms of the devices, they are pretty good. They've done a few pinout changes. The pinouts have pretty much stabilized. Again, when they went from the 84 type devices, and then they moved the power. Well, I think it was when they brought out the 8-pin devices, they decided to put the power pins up one end, and those have pretty much stayed there. Certainly, if you go up to about the 20-pin ones, they're very compatible. And the fact that the nice thing is that a lot of once you start writing in C, you could actually write a C program which could run on like an SOT6 and like 100-pin QFP 32-bit with basically just changing the config features and not much else.
Yeah, right. Timer, blinking LED. Yeah.
Okay, very fairly simple program, but a program nonetheless. and programming with the same programmer.
How much memory can you get in those little 6-pin SOT23s these days? It's still the same?
I think it's 512 words. I think it's 512 words. Who needs more?
Oh yeah, you can do a lot. You can do a lot in 512 words.
I've got a thing that I used a lot, which had a serial bootloader and the application code in 512 words. Yeah, and that was all in C. That wasn't assembly. That was all in C.
That's great.
I was looking at an app note the other day for this RS-485 thing I'm doing. It was just like, there's a RS-485 transceiver and it's talking to a chip, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Are you talking RS-485?
485, yeah, that's right. Like a Max 485 or similar. Yeah, like Mike uses that on a lot of his projects too, right? And but one of the things is like a Maxim. It was like a Maxim app note, and I was just like, just searching Google Images for app notes, whatever. And it's like, I forget I think it was a pick, but then it was like, and use this external UART chip, and I'm like, oh, external UARTs, that's a thing. Yeah, like that used to be bit bang to the external UART.
Those, yeah.
I've never had to deal with that ever. Like that's not me.
You've never had to use an external UART.
No.
Young whippersnapper.
I know. I think you mean young. I think the other thing too is that like I wasn't, like the beginning of my career, I was just doing analog stuff, so it was just like I wasn't touching any of this, and so or I was using more slightly upmarket parts.
Yeah, I think Chris is a bit young for that.
No, that's probably been for the last 20 years, maybe 20 years. You haven't had to worry about it. Everything has an internal UART. But if you start talking 20, 25 plus years ago, then it's common.
It's the microprocessor versus microcontroller divide. That's really when that sort of happened.
I don't miss it, guys. I don't know. I'm not like jonesing to have an external UART. There's no rosy colored glasses on that ones.
On that 1K one I was talking about, I had to bit bang my own I2C port because there was no such thing as I2C built into a micro back then. That was unheard of. Hardware I2C.
Yeah, that's simple enough unless you need to be a slave. That gets really tricky doing I2C slave, but master it's pretty simple. Although it always seems more complicated than it ought to be.
Yeah, the chip I had didn't even have a UART. So the 16F84 didn't have a UART. Yeah. Right? Still doesn't, I don't think. Oh, no, I think you can get maybe the A version does or something. But
that may have been the part that it was being used there. I think it was
not the 84, but the microchip, it's only, probably maybe last, I don't know, I couldn't quantify it, but microchip took quite a while before they started putting UARTs in their lowest end devices. There are some now, but it took quite a while.
They lagged a lot, because that's why, that's another thing, a lot of people move to the Atmels or the MSP 430s, or they move to other ones because they had, a couple of UARTs in them. So. Yeah.
But now there's an 8-pin one that's got 2 UARTs, I think. So, they've caught up on that.
And I used one once. It was a 24F series pick, and it had a couple of UARTs in it, and I was using those, and it was like, oops. They were swapped. They were actually, it was a silicon bug. They actually swapped it, and it didn't get through QA. It got through QA. I was wondering why my serial port wasn't working. And sure enough, I downloaded the latest data sheet. And sure enough, right down the bottom at the errata number 50, it says, oh yeah, by the way, serial port 1 is actually serial port 2, or vice versa. It's like, hey, come on. Oops. And the pins were swapped. Another errata. I don't know, the work experience kid must have done this chip. And the pins, the pins were swapped. So the TX and RX were actually swapped in the register or something. It was like, are you kidding me? And they just casually dropped this in the errata, 6 months after release.
That old TXRX confusion problem.
Oh, boy. Yeah. But they're coming out with so many variants. I mean, it must be, impossible to thoroughly vet everyone. It's just...
I'm still staggered by how many different picks there are out there, and I just don't understand. They do, even some of the low end, they do, one with 512 words and one with 1024, and it's about a cent difference in DigiKey. Why?
Because it matters in, a million volume. And some customers actually requested that. They've requested, look, we don't. And Microchip say, if you buy 1 million of them, we'll.
Yeah, I bet that could have been, though, it could have been the old one was 512. They upgraded because they had the space on the die or whatever. But then the one, the old company that's using it, they're like, no, you're still making that old one. You know what I mean? They're
or maybe it has it on the die. Maybe it actually has the 1K on the die, but they just
cut off one of the bits.
Laser it to 512.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
In fact, I know I know for a fact that happens in the ST chips because David too, he actually discovered during development of the microsupply, one of the chips, we had like a 128K version, but there was also a 256K version. He discovered how to actually toggle a couple of
the unlock
bits somewhere.
Was there a little
unlock,
USB plug you had to
there was an
plug
unlock.
in there?
There was a software unlock, and he actually discovered how to access the 256K because he started writing, fiddling about, started writing to these memory bits above, like actually directly addressing the memory above, and found he could read and write it. And it was like, holy, it's there. And
it didn't get reflected down somewhere else.
No. He double checked that. No, it was genuinely, yep. Because we were right on the limit, and we had to get there, and it was like double the price or something, for the 256 versus the 128. And he went, look, I can actually, and I think he actually compiled into the larger memory space somehow. So,
it's always a bit dodgy because you then suddenly might find they do it differently on your next production batch, and that memory suddenly isn't there anymore.
Oops.
But I think pretty much all the PICs have got some factory flash programming, like calibration data. So I'm sure there's bits in there that change some of the device configuration. I'm sure if you just decap a couple, you'll find the dies are probably identical.
Have you been using security on these chips? Are any customers worried about people stealing the code?
No, again, no. I mean, the customers just want the box to do the job. They want it done. They're not really interested.
How about your X-ray machine? I mean, so you still have that X-ray or no?
Yeah, I've still got the Factitron, which is it's a very small, it's very high resolution. Unfortunately, it's got fairly low. It only goes up to 35 kV, so it doesn't penetrate through much in the way of metal. But for chips and thin PCBs, it's quite fun.
I still haven't sent it to Dave, but I finally got that thing I mentioned on here. The local shop that I work out of, they had the CT scan or whatever, and I'll maybe after this I can screen share with you guys. It is just so cool to look at, like the high density VGA and like being able to see through the different levels and stuff like that. It's so cool to see. So that it can be really useful. I mean, I don't know how much are you doing a lot of fine pitch stuff these days, or is it just more kind of industrial style?
Not really,
big pitch things like I do.
He's got to assemble them himself, Chris.
Oh, true. Yeah.
He's not gonna.
Yeah, right. Don't make it tough. Don't make it
hard for himself. Come on.
Half mil QFPs is the normal limit. One thing I've been meaning to do with the X-ray is put a stepper motor or something so I can do like a rotation and do a sort of CT-like type thing. But add it to the list of things I'll probably never get around to doing.
Can't you just buy like an off-the-shelf turntable, like an off-the-shelf XY table or something, and just whack it in there? And
I've actually got the guts of an old XY plotter that I've earmarked for it, but I just haven't got around to it.
I think the hard part with that would be like reconstructing the image, right? Once you've made it, then you'd have to like stitch all that stuff together. That would be the hard part, I would think.
Yeah, I'm thinking literally you just take a number of shots and then play it back as an animation, so you just get the rotation and you let the brain join the dots.
Yeah, you can just slow-mo it or something like that. Or maybe even do like multiple frames.
Everyone asks me why I don't get an X-ray machine. I believe you need a license here in Australia to own an X-ray machine. Right. Yeah,
it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, the law in the UK is, I actually looked into it, and it's a little bit vague. Basically, again, this may have changed, but my interpretation was the wording sort of implies that this only applies to anything that's done as in the course of business.
X-ray for a hobby, yeah.
They didn't think about people having their own private X-ray machines when they wrote these regulations. No.
Yeah.
Right. You're not doing it as a service, right? You're not like X-raying people or animals or anything, or even other people's boards. It's just your own,
I think the fact that it's a completely self-contained unit may also be significant. You'd have to defeat a couple of interlocks to actually do anything with this. But I never looked into it. I looked at this ages ago when I was looking at buying a dental X-ray or something. But it's one of these don't ask, don't tell situations.
One of the things here is why I can't, I couldn't even get one if I wanted, if I tried, because they don't come up on the secondhand market here. I'd have to buy new and have a license because you're not allowed to sell them on the secondhand license. Well, technically you are allowed to sell them on the secondhand market, but you have to ensure legally that it's sold to somebody with a license. So that's basically why you never see them here on the secondhand market. You'll never find one on eBay or, Gumtree or something like that. You just won't find it.
Well, it's also expensive to ship, so they wouldn't be over there unless they're being used, probably, right? So,
no, but you won't even find one local. Like like the regular Grays Online, like a company's shutting down or something like that. The auction houses know they're not allowed to auction off these X-ray machines, so they just don't do it. You'll never find one, and that's the thing. It just has to get scrapped or.
Yeah, I'm just looking at eBay Australia now. It's all China, USA, various other places. I can't see any local. Dental X-rays are the usual ones that you get.
You get. Yeah, I think you can get portable little dental X-ray machines from import from China. I don't think they try and stop those, but maybe but not like a real one.
Yeah, actually, in the UK, there was a bit of a sort of semi-scandal in the UK a few years ago. There was one really popular handheld dental X-ray machine that had horrific leakage to the user, and the
why is my tummy all warm? I don't get it. Every time I use this, I get a bellyache.
Yeah, exactly, and the UK regulator did get involved in that. I can't remember what the upshot was, but they tested one of these things and said, this thing's horrific. I think they sent information out to all the dentists, and everyone's saying, this thing is lethal. Don't go near it.
Wow.
You could wear you could make a belt, or you make like it'd be like a new artistic thing where you're weaving your own clothing, but out of leaded solder, in multiple layers.
Curious about because my little boy busted his arm, had to have a full arm cast, and he's had half a dozen X-rays on that now, because every time he goes back to check the progress of it, they'll X-ray it again, X-ray half a dozen X-rays. I thought, when I was a boy, it was like X-rays were a big deal. This is taking X years off your life if you have an X-ray. I guess they're getting better at their
targeted doses or something.
They're more efficient. They can lower power or something.
Well, yeah, because I think because they use electronic sensors rather than film, so I imagine the doses have probably gone down quite a lot. Since I don't know in detail, but I'd imagine that's one factor.
Yeah, because they wouldn't just X-ray a little kid half a dozen times, just for a.
Yeah, well, maybe they figure that since Chernobyl, the average background's gone up enough that it's less of an issue.
Or Dave's son is going to be in a superhero at some point. At some point, it just the mutation happens and you become an X-Man.
Yeah, you're not that far from Fukushima either, are you?
Yep. So, Mike, any new things on the EV front?
I've started trying to take a few bits of my car apart. I tried to get the lid off the onboard charger, but they've got some goopy gaskety stuff that I couldn't easily get it off. But I actually there's a company that basically handles all the insurance write-offs of cars called Copart. They operate worldwide, and I did actually find a Kona that had been it had basically been front and back ended. And I was seriously thinking about sort of trying to get hold of it. The problem is, it's what they call a Category B, which means that it's not allowed to ever go back on the road again. And to buy one of these, you need all sorts of licenses, like waste disposal licenses and all this sort of thing. And I did start making inquiries to a local sort of breaker guy to sort of see if we could figure out a way of basically him to buy it on his account and sell it to me.
and just sell you the good parts and sell you the interesting parts.
Well, I mean, it didn't go quite because something else got in the way and I didn't follow it up. But basically, what I'd have ideally wanted was him to sort of buy it, chop out the VIN number, which I think is mostly what they need for their paperwork, and just dump it at the back of my place, so I can then just dismantle it at my leisure.
So you could just become like a wrecking yard or something like that. That's what you need to do.
Although it was heavily damaged, it did actually still run and drive. So, I was thinking of, do some reverse engineering on the CAN bus, keep a few spares for mine, sell a few spares, and probably sell the battery to someone wanting to do home storage. And the price it went at, I could almost certainly have easily at least broken even on it.
And Mike, can you remind people the model you have as well? You said Kona. Is it Hyundai?
Yes, a Kona.
Which year is it?
Hyundai Kona, yeah.
Okay.
It's 2018. It's a fairly early.
That was one of their first
one. Yeah. It was basically what happened was, what spurred it all. I had a VW Sirocco diesel, which is a fabulous car, but around London there's a thing called the ULEZ, ultra low emission zone, which basically meant you've got to pay a certain amount to drive in London if your cars don't meet a certain amount of emissions. And next year they're extending this out to like a much wider part of London. So I thought, well, my diesel's going to be worth nothing when that happens. So I just started looking around. Knew literally nothing at all about EVs. I thought, EV might be interesting. Had a look, and this would have been about a year and a half ago, something like that. I started reading reviews, and everyone said, "Oh, the Kona, it's the best car, fabulous range, great car, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant." But
Right.
you had to wait a year to get one because they sold their initial allocation and they're on a ridiculous lead time. And I just found one at a local dealer, which was, I think, it was an ex-demonstrator, about 5,000 miles or something, at list price. So I just sort of phoned them up, took a test drive, said, "Yeah, fine, I'll have it." Wanted time for a new toy. Didn't really make financial sense, but it was the new.
What do they peg the efficiency at for it, like the mileage?
In summer, you can, 4 miles per kilowatt hour without even trying. If you're really, really light footed, you can get over 5 miles per kilowatt hour. And it's got 64 kilowatt hour battery, so you're talking over 300 miles range.
Right. You said that
ever go that far, but it's nice to just, you just don't worry about range at all.
Yeah, miles.
That's about right. I think 200 miles, right?
217 miles. Yeah, it's a smaller pack. Mine's a 38 kilowatt.
But Mike, you said that London has like requirements on like efficiency. So like, do they actually tag the efficiency to like a gas or diesel?
No. Basically, it's basically emissions. So with the ULEZ, I think petrol cars over the last 6-7 years are compliant, and diesel's the big problem because they were a while ago. Everyone was pushing diesel until they discovered about all the NOx emissions.
Oh, but they were super efficient. The VW ones, nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
No, this was before Dieselgate.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. My diesel Sirocco got amazing mileage. It really did. I hardly ever. It was almost like I hardly ever had to fill it up, and it didn't feel like a diesel at all. It was super smooth. So the requirements for diesels are quite high, and there's all sorts of things. Like some London boroughs, they charge you more for parking permits if you've got a diesel, and so on. So
that's interesting.
But no, EVs basically. If you're anywhere, if you need to go through London, an EV is almost a no-brainer because there's a congestion charge and an emission zone, and there's parking. Like, for example, to park, just today I parked right in the centre of London, and you basically, if you've got an EV, you pay for 10 minutes and you get 4 hours on street parking.
Yeah.
And 4 hours, we're talking probably like I don't know, it's £8 or £9, something like that. It's like
here in Australia, it'd be $50.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, there's sort of major concessions. But no, for me, it's fantastic to drive. If you ever drive a petrol car afterwards, it's so noisy and smelly and whatever.
No, you'd never go back once you've got an EV. They're great. So do you have solar at home?
No.
I do know you live in the UK.
No,
it is the UK day.
Yeah. I don't do a huge amount of mileage, maybe 10,000 miles a year, but I've got a tariff that gives me 4 hours cheap overnight. About, I think it's 4p a kilowatt hour or something for 4 hours, which is I just set the timer on the car and
great. That's great.
That
so you're taking this thing apart now, and like, how accessible is it under the hood? Like, is it pretty buttoned up, and like, how much do you have to actually dig into it to get at stuff?
I'm not quite sure why they've used this gungy seal, but the motor and inverter, it's all like for one big lump, so it's a bit hard to get.
There's reasons, Mike.
Apart. But yeah, that's probably more down to efficiency than anything else. But there's
probably about like 480 reasons or whatever the rail voltage is.
Yeah. Oh no, that's easy. Just don't lick the orange bits. That's fine. You'll be fine. And in practice, all you've got to do is once you've disconnected the 12-volt battery, then it can't close the contactor that's inside the battery pack. So you'd have to try quite hard. Although I was contemplating the idea of tapping off the orange cable from the battery to the high voltage junction box to stick it into an inverter. So
right,
I've got a house backup power supply.
Just install your own connector on the side, So.
Well, one of the things, if I'd have got that scrap one, I'd have taken that cable and done a tee-off version of it with some fuses and started playing around with that. But
there was a commercial going around the holidays for like Christmas Vacation, like that Clark W. Griswold thing, and they did a remake of the commercial where they went and plugged the really lit up house into an EV. So It was a good one. It was a good one.
I don't think the Hyundais have the capability built in to backfeed into the grid, do they? Because that's going to be a thing.
No, I mean, the new if you've seen the advert for the new Hyundai platform, their new Ionic branding thing, that does. They actually show the picture, and they actually show a picture of a Type 2 plug with a Shuko socket in the back of it. What the interesting thing is one of the things on my list to talk about, is the utter horror and crapness that is the CCS charging standard. The CCS have been talking about, they've got a timeline for basically the general buzzword is V2G, vehicle to grid, or V2H, vehicle to home, or V2X, vehicle to whatever. And, it makes sense if you've got this 64 kilowatt battery sitting out there.
Oh, of course, it's huge. That's a massive pack.
It would be nice to be able to plug my house. Okay, we don't get power cuts very often.
For those who want a bit of scale here, like my Hyundai has a 38 kilowatt. Yours is what?
64.
64, whereas a Tesla is like 10. Right, so like a Tesla home Powerwall. Tesla
the Powerwall, yeah.
Right, so people will typically get 10.
Right,
installed.
but you wouldn't take it all the way down.
Car,
whereas a Powerwall might go all the way down. You wouldn't take your car all the way down, would you?
No, unless it was the zombie apocalypse.
Okay, sure.
Of course. But like, so these things can be 4 or 5 times larger than your typical home battery storage.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why EVs are so expensive.
Does have a big pack too. I mean, like some of the
it's
large
like
ones, right?
I think up to 100 and something for the big
50?
ones.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, is it huge one?
I think 100. Is it 110 the top one? It's big, really? Certainly.
Wow.
I think so.
Yeah. So that is 10 times. That's an order of magnitude bigger than their Powerwall. Right?
Yeah.
That's how big this thing is.
Right.
But one of the issues, I mean, the fast charge DC charge standard, basically all it is 2 big pins in the socket and a contactor that connects straight across the battery. That's all it is. The problem is the protocol. Now, there's 2 main protocols out there, the CCS and there's CHAdeMO. CHAdeMO was like the old one that things like the Nissan Leaf use, which is pretty much dying. CHAdeMO are trying to claim it's not, but certainly in Europe it's dying on its arse.
Yep.
It'll be around for a while. But the nice thing about CHAdeMO, it's a really well-designed standard in that it's simple. It uses CAN bus, it's got dedicated pins for dedicated functions, and it already supports outputting power from the car. And there are actually some V2G trials, vehicle to grid trials going on in the UK at the moment with the Nissan Leaf. But unfortunately, the one downside of CHAdeMO, it uses separate connectors for AC and DC. Now, unfortunately, in the UK and I think elsewhere, there's CCS, and I think the US uses CCS1, which is basically a Type 1 AC connector with 2 extra pins on the bottom for the DC. And
the Yanks are weird, aren't they? They don't want to. Yeah. They always want to run their own.
Yeah, but it's basically the same standard. It's just because the AC connector was different in the US. It's based on different connector.
I think the US probably got used to like just determining their own, like GM and all that. We're just like, well, we always used to make everything, so why don't they follow us?
And even Tesla, who are the Apple of the car world, right? They have to manufacture. They use, if you buy a Tesla here in Australia, it's got a different charge connector. It's got the CCS charge connector.
Yeah, and in Europe,
and the US
and
Europe as well, I think.
I was reading something about the other day, and they're doing some weird, because I think the US ones have got their own connector.
And Tesla have their own custom connector in the US,
And I think they are actually doing a CCS adapter for it. Which sounds a bit sketchy.
You can buy an adapter cable,
I think that might limit the current a little bit, because I don't really like the idea of like 300 amps at 400 volts
going through
on an adapter.
a dodgy adapter cable.
Well, you can get off Amazon though. You can get like a secondary market one. Like just like not.
Comes out of that
it's low cost because it's lighter, more lightweight. There's less copper in there, and
But no, the problem with CCS is it's a hardware standard that has very clearly been spec'd by a software person. I think basically what it uses a protocol called GreenFi, which was originally designed for power line communication, like domestic, putting data over your mains power lines. So someone obviously thought, okay, this is a power application, this is a power line protocol, let's use that. So basically what you've got is a system where all this thing needs to do is the car to tell the charger, give me 200 amps at this much voltage, give me 100 amps at this much voltage. And that's pretty much it. It's a very simple, say CHAdeMO does it using CAN bus. It's really simple. But this GreenFi protocol has got, ridiculous modulation. It's got encryption. It's got 7 OSI layers.
Is this Qualcomm's GreenPhi? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
I think we may have just solved the problem right there. It's a Qualcomm's GreenPhi.
Well, I don't know whether it's a Qualcomm, but it's the fact that it's vastly more complicated than it needs to be. Mm-hmm. And this means that it's difficult to implement. There's all sorts of compatibility problems between some, there's always some car you hear that certain cars and certain chargers don't play well together. It takes quite a long time to sort it out. A lot of the car manufacturers are undoubtedly just buying a software stack in. Mm-hmm. I actually found the CCS module in my car. So there's just like a module that's basically a CAN bus to CCS bridge, which I'm going to start investigating some of the CAN side of things. But because it's a really complicated protocol, there are so many ways that it can fail. But also because it's got this encryption, you can't just, if it was CAN bus, you could hang a scope on it. Yeah. If you've got, say, one charger and one car that doesn't work, you could go down there, stick a scope on it, log all the communications, figure out where it's going wrong. But this, you can't really do that. Now, somebody does actually make a CCS monitor, but I don't quite understand how that works because there's all sorts of encryption and key exchange and completely unnecessary stuff for something which is a physical hardwired connection between one car and one charger.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's a. So I'm looking. I dropped a PDF in the chat here for you guys, but like it looks like it's. Yeah, it's just like there's a Qualcomm interface chip effectively, and they made the standard. It looks like that's.
Yep.
But the problem is the CCS standard is umpteen layers on top of that standard.
Oh, okay. So this is just the physical layer, and then you're saying
if you look up the CCS standard, it's just Plus, I've not looked at the details, but from what I gather, there are certain aspects that aren't very well specified. Certainly not as tightly specified as they should have been for a protocol that's meant to work any car plus any charger.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the problems sort of come from. Yeah. But I think they have a timeline for doing V2G, but it's like still 2 or 3 years off, which is just crazy. Yeah. And other stuff like plug to charge, so that it can authenticate the car, so you don't have this idiocy with all the different membership cards or apps or whatever. There's another big problem, and that's one of the biggest problems at the moment. Is that there's a lot of fast chargers out there. 50 kilowatts, and now we've got some 100 and 350 kilowatt chargers coming online, but the newer ones are I think there's a very strong government recommendation in the UK that they should all accept at least contactless credit card payments. So you just rock up, plug in, wave your card, and go.
Yep.
But a lot of the legacy ones, you've got apps or RFID cards, and it's an absolute nightmare. It's just ridiculous.
Well, one of them, I can't remember, is it ChargePoint or something? No, not ChargePoint. One of the other players that have their own network of chargers, they've gone out of business here in Australia, so we're left with like this abandoned network of chargers. I'm not sure if they still work or not, but it's like and you needed some RFID card to make it work, some account with them, and some card.
Yeah, there was a UK network with just 7 kilowatt AC chargers, which I think they were abandoned. But if you still got one of the old RFID cards, they still work, but you can't get new cards for them.
Yeah, I've heard that they do still work. Yeah. I think some of them still work here too. Yeah, even though the
ones that fall apart. But no, it's all
you just can't get a new card.
I mean, this is kind of. I think one of there's like a page on this document I sent you guys too that I'll link on the notes. But like they're doing a comparison, and like one of the other things that they're putting in here is like CCS has controlled DC fast charge. Fine, that's the same as CHAdeMO, but then also simple payment and billing, time of day pricing, home network integration. It's like all of these things that are just, it seems like it's this fluff that's on top of it. That's
exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that necessary. So.
Let's think of anything we might possibly want and then throw a load of other stuff in and
mandate
all of that complexity on the simplest plug in and charge my car situation.
Yeah. Right, I don't like that.
But they can fix all this, Mike, by just adding an extra layer that fixes it all.
Do it in software, man.
Cue the XKCD cartoon.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes, that's it. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
The thing with EVs though is that people don't realize that it actually changes the game for let's just call it half the market, right? Half the market who own EVs will never have to go to a charging station. Almost
very
never.
Rarely.
Very rarely, unless you're going on some huge road trip or something, right? It's so you don't need all the number of petrol stations. Basically, if you've got a home with a place to park your car, you've almost certainly got power there. Yeah. You can recharge overnight, and it does all of your daily needs. Yeah. There's no need to go to a charge station.
I've needed to fast charge, I think, 4 times since I've had the car.
Right.
Actually
In
needed
what,
to.
a year
I've
and
done
a
it a
half,
few
2
times.
years?
Yeah. But I don't do a
I've
huge
only
amount
done
of
it
mileage.
out of curiosity. Yeah. Oh no, sorry. Yeah. Actually, I've only done it out of curiosity. I've never.
And obviously, there will be some people that do need to use it regularly, and some people that need to use it occasionally.
Oh, but especially in the European countries where, nobody, like, people go, a garage, what's that? I park my car on the street, it's
yeah.
Or people who live downtown, such as myself,
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but I think that's one of the problems, one of the barriers for people getting an IV. They've still got this petrol station mindset. And they think, once they realise the convenience, the fact, just imagine you wake up and your car is full of petrol every morning.
Yeah. and that's via the PowerPoint slow charger.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because most people, average of 50 kilometers a day or something, or 50 miles a day or whatever, you can recharge that overnight. So you come home, you plug it in. You don't need a fast charger at home even.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you get into terminology. I suppose technically, slow, fast, and rapid are the conventions.
Slow, fast, and rapid.
Yeah, fast is 7 kilowatts or occasionally 11 if you've got 3-phase. But most people, certainly in the UK, don't have 3-phase.
Yours is like mine. It's only single phase charger on the car, right?
Mine is the 2019 Kona does have 3-phase charger.
Oh, it does it? Okay, right. Mine's the 2020 model, and it has only got single phase.
So that may also vary with region, because obviously in like some European countries, 3-phase is common, but also the current is lower, so that the standard single phase would be 240 volts at 32 amps. But I think someone said in Germany, the common, they've got 3-phase, but they don't have 32 amps spare.
Right.
So a 3-phase 16 amp is a more common scenario, but. Yeah, that varies country by country, and the way that the actual onboard chargers on the cars, the way they often handle that is that they've actually got 3 separate chargers, and they strap 2 of them together for single phase and run 3 separately for 3-phase, which has had a couple of unfortunate occurrences. There's actually the Renault Zoe, which is quite a well-known situation, but apparently the Hyundai and the Kona and the Kia e-Niro had an issue with 1 or 2 chargers that support solar, in that they didn't do the single versus 3-phase detection. If the way the protocol works, it's a super simple protocol, the AC charging protocol, but the car doesn't know whether it's getting single or 3-phase until the charger turns the power on.
Oh.
And what happened with those was that I can't remember if it was actually something that wasn't well specified on the in the standard, but this particular solar charger, depending on how much power was available, could switch between single and 3-phase, and it would do the there's a line called control pilot, which the wall charger tells the car what's happening, and it would put it back into the idle state, and the car should have interpreted this as the car being unplugged and plugged back in again. But some of these 2 cars, the onboard charger didn't do that. So what would happen was it would switch between single phase and 3-phase. No, between 3-phase and single phase. The car would assume it was still in single phase mode and short 2 of the phases together, which didn't end well. It would generally damage the charger and the onboard charger and the charge point. But I think they've issued a recall to fix that now. But
right. Does your Kona have? Because my Ionic, from the 2019 model to the 2020, the 2020's changed for the DC fast charge. It's actually a stepped charger. So like at below 50%, you'll get your full 50 kilowatts, but above 50, it'll drop down to 40 kilowatts. And then above 60, it'll just drop down and down and down.
All EVs do that, but the actual curve they use is different between cars. I've heard that the Ionic is particularly bad, cautious, whatever.
Cautious.
The Kona has had a couple of recalls because they've had a few batteries catching fire incidents worldwide, and they've done something where I think it pauses at 80 and 90%. And my reading between the lines, I don't think they actually know what's been causing these fires. What they've done is they've tightened up the maximum cell deviation, so that if it sees more than, I think it's 150 millivolts deviation between the highest and the lowest cell, it will just shut the car down and you've got to take it to the dealer. But also it does this pause.
Check engine lights, huh?
Yeah. And one of the things that has changed in the most recent software update recall was that they paused it, I think, at 80 and 90% for a while. And I'm guessing, again, that's probably just wait for it to stabilize and then check the cell deviation again. But it's obviously aren't really saying what's actually happening with this. But
that's part of the secret sauce. Yeah. And the thing is that the problem is in order to compete, they have to offer massive battery warranties. I mean, mine's got an 8-year battery warranty. I don't know about yours, right? And they have no history of how long these things are going to last, right? So that's why they're being from the 2019 to the 2020 model, they went, well, we're getting the heebie-jeebies about this battery warranty. It's got to last 8 years and it's got to have X capacity after 8 years, and people are fast charging these things at 50 kilowatts. We'd better step it down just to be, once you get over 50%, well...
Yeah, I mean, I think things like Nissan Leafs have been around long enough that I think they're fairly confident that the fast charging itself, as long as you keep the temperature under control, isn't a problem. We've had Nissan Leafs that have done like 200,000 miles fast charged every day as taxis and still got like 80% of the battery after that.
Yep.
But
that's them. I mean, every manufacturer has to start from scratch.
Yeah, but I don't think the batteries. I don't. There's only a few battery manufacturers at the moment. I think.
Yeah, but how you implement them could be an issue too.
Yeah.
So,
but there's really not that many parameters. It's basically temperature and charge rate. I don't think there's really that much. Yeah. As long as you haven't got any hotspots and your heating is well distributed, I don't think that's a major issue. But yeah, apparently in Korea, I saw a report they'd had 100 that they replaced the batteries on, 100 Konas.
Oh, really?
But for some reason, this seems to be more prevalent in Korea. I don't know whether it's a usage pattern or something that's different there. But obviously, if you've got a battery fire, it's very hard to figure out what actually happened. So my guess is that they are hoping that they'll see a bigger cell deviation as a precursor to it catching fire, so they can stop it, so it doesn't actually catch fire. But I'm sure that I know there's been 1 or 2 reports of people in the UK since having the BMS update that they have said, the car has subsequently said, error, take it to the dealer, sort of thing, for a new battery.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, they're being extra cautious.
Yeah, of course. I mean, battery fires are never good publicity.
Yeah, no, it's never good publicity, and you don't want to find that in 8 years' time you're liable for a million battery packs, right? Because these things are. Because everyone would be clamoring, right? If it, because they make a specific claim.
Yeah, I mean, if you had like a 5% down, you'd be like, nope, I'm getting mine replaced.
Yeah,
you do worry what effect it's going to have on the resale values as it starts getting towards the end of warranty. But I suppose if it's run for 8 years without blowing up, then it's probably okay.
Yeah, it's probably okay. Yeah, but I'm so glad I didn't buy the secondhand Leaf. I was umming and ahhing for years about buying a secondhand Leaf, and the range is just crap on them. It wouldn't have been usable. It would have been a cute toy for just, but it's not really a...
For local stuff, it's probably, if your usage pattern is such that you can deal with that range, then it's fine.
Oh, of course. Yeah. No, but occasionally I've got to drive up the mountains or up the coast or, and it's just, it's absolutely useless.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, Mike, you had mentioned vehicle to grid. Can you explain what that actually requires, like internally, to get a car that will do that? I mean, is it like a secondary like charge flow reverser, or like what's in there?
Well, no, I mean, but if you look at the fast charging architecture, as I said on the car, is basically 2 big fat pins on the plug, a contactor, the battery, and that is it. Obviously, there's monitoring and measurement. So the intelligence is in the thing that you have at home that plugs into the car that can tell the car, okay, give me 50 amps now. And it'll be very similar to a solar inverter in that it will talk to the grid. The grid will say, okay, I need this capacity at this time, and it can talk to like 20 cars in the neighborhood that can suddenly feed power into the grid. So the box on the wall would be a DC to AC converter, very much like a solar inverter. I'm skeptical about vehicle to grid specifically. In places like, for example, you've got a bus depot with like 20 buses all plugged in overnight, I think that could easily work. But individual people, I think just because of the cost of the inverter to do it, I'm not really sure how viable that is. But
I've seen prices of $10,000 for one of these vehicle to grid inverter boxes.
Yeah, it depends on. I think the cost would be comparable to a solar inverter because it's doing pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Just because at the moment they're not making many of them. Yeah, exactly.
Right? Instead of like micro inverters.
But because they're an exotic thing now, they're like, I've heard they're charging like $10,000 for this box.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But that's because they don't make many of them.
Yeah, exactly. So
okay, so this is a thing that is potentially on the way, but it's not like the way you were talking about it. I thought it was like something they just hadn't included yet, like for this specific model. But you're saying this is like a trial still.
In theory, the existing cars could all do it.
Sure.
Well,
Sure.
Well, it depends what you call theory. Nissan Leafs can do it today, and they are actually running trials at the moment in the UK doing it because the CHAdeMO already has the provision for spitting power out of the car. CCS doesn't support it yet, and it's interesting that new Hyundai platform claims to be able to do it. And I wonder if they're maybe CCS are going to get their act together and put it in the protocol soon. But I suspect that what might happen is actually Hyundai are going to do their own thing, their own protocol, to just bypass that and let it spit power out.
Or their marketing department's just going to go, CCS are promising this update, so we'll market it and then we'll just include it later.
I mean, most cars probably could support it if they had a software update, but who's going to, by the time it's in the standard, are they going to give software updates to 5-year-old cars? No.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is just something we're going to see in the future, probably.
Yes.
As long as okay. And so then eventually a government might try and mandate this in future standards or something like that, but it's not.
Or it'll be a marketing thing. Like you won't want to buy a new EV unless the manufacturer promises to give you a software update to
And do
it. It might be
what was the other option? So there's vehicle to grid and then vehicle to home. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So you just use your car as a home backup. So if you live in a place with unreliable power, you've got this massive UPS sitting in the garage. So why not use it? Right. And there are one or two cars. I think the Honda E has actually got a main socket inside, and there's I think some of the pickup type. I think the Ford pickup or something's got a 3 kilowatt AC output or something.
I believe that. Probably for like camping and things like that.
That's pretty sweet. So all of the issue have to do with the external box. It's not necessarily to do with the car. That's more of a software interfacey protocol interface, because the as Mike said, the CCS connector has the two terminals directly across the battery. So it's basically that's it. You can get the power out of that car. But it's how you actually integrate with your house, integrate with the grid and everything else. Yeah. That's the job of the external box. It's nothing to do with the car.
Yeah. And the only possible thing, obviously, the car's onboard current measurement has to be able to deal with current going out of as well as into that port.
Yeah, right.
But I'd imagine it's already got to deal with power going in and out of the battery from the motor anyway. So I think it's fairly unlikely you'd have car hardware that couldn't support it. It's just a software thing.
Yep.
Well, guys, I have to get one at some point now. I mean, that's
yeah.
I feel left out. I gotta say.
So they reckon 2021 is the year of the EV. They reckon there's like 24 EVs coming on the market.
Oh yeah, there's loads. Yeah, definitely. The sales have been increasing even through lockdown, whereas all the internal combustion has sort of been declining. I think this varies a lot by country. Different countries have got different attitudes. Sure. Norway is just off the scale with EVs already.
Yep.
Yeah, isn't it like 50% take up in new car sales or something? Crazy.
Yeah. They've got a lot of incentives there. Whereas it's Australia that are actually thinking of taxing EVs.
Yeah, they're thinking of taxing EVs. I think it might be a bill in Parliament at the moment or something. Yeah,
but you already generate a lot of your power from coal still, so
exactly. But the amount of where our EV take up here, because we've had no tax subsidies at all, unlike the US and other.
Yeah, we're still 7,500, I think, for
practically no one here owns an EV. Yeah, there's a lot, quite a few Teslas around and stuff like that, but that's basically a rich person's toy. Yeah, but the actual percentage take up is like 0.1% of car sales or something. It's like one of the lowest in the world here in Australia, which is surprising because we have practically the world's largest solar uptake here because of the subsidies. Everyone, like 40% of houses here in Australia have solar on them. Yeah. It's insane.
You guys actually have sunshine too, so
we have sunshine. But it was all because of the tax subsidies.
Of course.
So so. If we didn't have that, and the same with EVs, we've had no tax subsidies. Therefore, nobody bothered to do them. And because we have a import luxury car tax, it's called, anything over like $75,000 or $80,000 gets taxed. And an EV here, like a Tesla, even the Model 3 is barely on the threshold of the luxury car tax. It's like $79,000 or something.
Yeah,
So
same
it's
here,
like,
actually, I think.
Yeah.
On the
So
Teslas.
that's another disincentive to buy a high-end Tesla.
I think I can imagine, like, you guys don't have. I mean, do you have any in-country manufacturing for cars? I feel like
Australia has nothing left.
Yeah, I feel like that drives a lot of it too. Like, because
it
they're
just
trying
stopped
to,
like 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to build, like, so at least in the US, car manufacturing is just such a huge piece of GDP here too, that, like, I don't think there's a ton of interest in it broadly. I mean, I hope there is, but I don't think, countrywide that there's like people clamoring for it. But I think they see the future, and like they're like, okay, well, all these car companies are going to build out electric vehicles. We got to sell them somehow, and like it's actually it's an economic move as anything else. So I'm damn happy about it personally, but it's like, I don't think it's like, I think that might have changed then Australia's take on it if you guys had in-country manufacturing for that sort of thing.
Oh, it may. I can see possibly manufacturing coming back here because, this talks about now with our trade wars with China and everything. We're talking about local manufacturing.
Dave, start the automotive.
Start the EV or the EV company.
EV,
I'll go for that.
EV car, like the EV.
The angel funding.
EV.
There you go.
Yeah, oh boy. And so that's, I could potentially see that coming back. So, but we'll see. But the other thing is Australia is, if you haven't noticed, on the opposite side of the planet to where everything else is made.
Yeah, we haven't.
So it's actually kind of expensive to ship stuff here.
Here's what I'm thinking, Dave. Sinclair C1 with a 20 kilowatt hour battery pack.
Yep. I can kickstart that bastard.
Yeah, right.
Yep. You betcha. $10 million on Kickstarter, guaranteed.
Bingo.
Yeah. Yep. All I need is a few fancy renders and some.
They call it the chariot of fire. The chariot of fire.
That's probably not such good marketing.
No, it's just realistic, man.
Flaming EV.
Yeah, right.
Oh boy. Yep.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of new cars coming out next year, and there's a few like XPeng in China, one of the big Chinese manufacturers, is starting to ship to Europe, so that'll be interesting. So,
when I went to visit the electric bus depot here in Sydney, I did a video on that.
Yeah,
and I was surprised to learn that China have like 50% of their buses are electric.
Yeah,
it's like, wow, who knew, right? They have this massive
people
percentage.
in China, Dave, the people that are taking the bus.
I know, people in China know, but
like,
people outside,
look, another electric bus. I'm getting on the bus, so it's an electric bus.
It's just because their cities are so polluted that even China has to do something about it.
It's great. Hey, every time I see more stuff like this, it's wonderful. Whatever it takes. And Mike, did you say it's HINO? Is that who it is? What was the company you said?
No, XPeng.
XPeng. Sorry.
Yeah, they're the ones that got accused of stealing all of Tesla's self-driving code.
Oh,
allegedly.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
With the spies, all those 2 million Communist Party spies throughout the world, we've all, come on.
No, I think that was actually ex-Tesla employees went to work for them, and
right.
Oh wow, yeah. I'm looking at
if they didn't, it would have got out
P7,
anyway.
The P7 electric sedan. I mean, like every car kind of looks the same these days, but like, this pretty much looks like a Model S and a Model X on their website, so that's fun.
But apparently their self-parking actually works better than Tesla's at the moment.
Oh yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. No, we probably haven't talked about it before, but your take on the self-driving thing, I think, I think it's not as close to being as in certain places, yes.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
I've seen sort of some discussion about it in that, that's one of, in theory, Tesla's big things that all the current motor manufacturers aren't really taking seriously. And things like, self-driving cabs and the fact, okay, people like driving their own cars, but if they're commuting every day, then if they can be sitting doing something else while the car's taking care of it.
Right.
But also there's other aspects like the safety side of things, in that self-driving cars on average will probably be safer than non-self-driving cars. And one of Tesla's sort of hidden things is car insurance, in that they've got vast amounts of data.
Yeah.
And, I think they're already starting to offer it. And, rumor has it that, if you buy a Tesla, you can buy much cheaper car insurance from them, and that's potentially a massive earner from them going forward. And with self-driving, and I think there is some some of the things like collision avoidance is already on the verge of being mandated in some areas. So I think we're going to see that sort of stuff improving road safety. And at some point, I think there might be a tipping point, but it's hard to know exactly when and where. And it's probably vary a lot by country.
Yeah. I've already found that those features in mine are quite handy. The collision avoidance, like you're going out of the lane or you're trying to pull into another lane, but there's a car there. Beep beep beep. It warns you, and it'll and it'll keep a safe distance. Mine actually has some self-driving capability. It'll actually stay in the lane. I can take the hands off the wheel, and it'll follow the lane and turn and keep a set distance from the car.
It's got the front radar as well. The front radar.
Yes.
So that's a nice thing.
I mean, gas-based cars have that too, though. I mean, like that's a
No, it isn't anything new to EVs.
In the past, I've never liked cruise control because it's so easy to suddenly find you're in the back of someone if it's a simple constant speed one.
Whereas this will keep a distance. I can actually I can program the distance between the car in front and me, and it'll automatically slow down and it's great, and speed up as well.
Almost found by accident. It's really good in stop-start traffic as well. It works really well in stop-start crawling traffic, and it would just you just sit there and it just starts and stops. Yeah, exactly. And if it stops for more than about 2 seconds, you have to press a pedal to restart it again. But if it's other than that, it actually works really well in that situation. And say the steering thing works most of the time reasonably well.
Yep. Although I've found that the self-drive, like a lot of these features are easily tricked. I found, at night time or on a wet road or on a curved road over a hill, and it'll just lose it. Or some specific cases I found where I'm actually going into a legitimate lane, but it thinks I'm actually turning because I've got my blinker on. Like you need to put your blinker on for a specific, multi-lane turning road, but it thinks you're turning, and it'll beep at you when it shouldn't. Like it just thinks that you're going to crash it, and no, I'm following the road rules. And it's just, it needs a bit of refinement. But
yeah, and the other one that I've had probably most annoying is the collision avoidance thing, is where you're basically are actually heading straight at another car, but it's actually a parked car that you're going to steer around.
Yes, exactly.
When you get to it, but it doesn't know that yet. And it thinks you're going to crash into it.
Yep. Yeah, I've had that. So it's not that smart. I don't know if the Tesla's any smarter, but famously, while I was at the bus depot, I actually saw the bus that everyone was tweeting that morning, and I even retweeted it myself because there was this Tesla that famously was fooled by a big advertisement of somebody's face on the back of the bus, and thought it was a person stepping out, so the camera. So he's like, because the Tesla records everything, so he's got the recorded data from it, and oops. So I think in certain specific circumstances, yes, it's very valuable and it's going to work, but you take it in unusual situations, which around Sydney. If you ever drive in cars around Sydney, holy crap, especially at night and in the rain and all sorts of, crap, because the Tesla only has cameras. It doesn't have, Lidar and stuff. So
yeah, I had an interesting take on that, in that I think Tesla's attitude is that Lidar is very much a stopgap for systems where they can't do it. Because you think about it, what are the sensing things on a normal manual driven car? 2 eyeballs. You don't have Lidar. So it clearly can be done with optically, and Lidar's almost like a stopgap for when you can't make the optics work as well as they could do.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
True.
On that.
But, where I think we're still a long way from, their AI being as good as a human.
Yeah, I don't think it's as far away as a lot of people think, though. Certainly for quite a lot of situations.
I'm still calling 20 years.
Oh no! Five, less than 5.
No.
Easily.
Right,
I'll bet you on that. I will say 10.
I don't have a good take on this, so yeah.
No. I will say 10. It'll be people will be using their full self-driving in their Tesla, okay, but it won't be able to do everything.
No. But if you can,
I'm talking about doing everything. I'm talking about being anywhere and then summon your car, come and pick me up, or take me to this exact thing.
Yeah, you mean like
go up these ramps, go underground,
everyday things instead of like
practical
demo.
everyday things instead of getting from one city to another. That's fine. You can do that now. No, I'm talking about practical everyday things where, you have to park up on the curb or something, or because there's roadworks here, or there's some other
Park up on the
thing.
curb. What?
It's not going to be able to figure this stuff out.
I mean, have you seen human drivers, Dave? Most human drivers can't figure things out too. So
yeah, but we are adaptable. We
are liabilities.
Any situation, right? That's the thing. That's what I'm talking about. That adaptability. That's 20 plus years away.
Mm.
I do not see that within the next decade.
Yeah, but if you can make it work, safely in, let's say, 90% of the situation.
Oh, sure. No,
I think it'll take over small things at a time.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I think once it gets approved in one country, and if they start seeing major benefits in terms of road safety, I think that could then.
That'll be the trigger.
You then get like insurance discounts and whatever else. I think that could sort of start the ball rolling. And say, it will never deal with all situations, but if it can deal with like 90% of the situations, it's still a very valuable thing.
Yeah,
and if you think about how much data Tesla has probably already got, real world data,
it's phenomenal.
It's certainly a lot more than anybody else has.
Yeah. There's rumor has that Tesla, because Tesla's got 2 computers in it, right?
Yeah.
2 of these supercomputer, image processing things, and they reckon one of them. There's a theory, nobody's actually sure, but one of the theories is that one of them is actually doing all speculative stuff and actually recording that, and then it's comparing to what the other one did and whether or not it's running new algorithms on the second one, and then it's actually, so they're doing in-car testing and stuff like that, and then they're uploading that to the Tesla server and go, okay, how far different was this new experimental thing from what the driver actually did? So they're taking they're recording the inputs from the driver. Okay, we thought that we had to stop here, but the driver didn't. Therefore, oops, we were wrong, and it's correcting the algorithms, and that gets uploaded, and they learn that way. They reckon experimentation's happening on your car as you drive.
I'm sure someone will reverse engineer it and show it at the next Chaos Communications Congress or something.
Yeah, definitely. But that's one of the theories about how they're getting so good so quick.
Yeah.
Is that because they're recording what the humans do and then comparing that to what they expected, and then they're learning each time the human does something different to what they expected. So, smart. It's very smart.
Yeah, interesting times. And I think if the self-driving does turn out to be a big thing, then I think a lot of the other current legacy car companies could start really struggling to catch up, because most of them are just definitely so far behind, even in just basic car stuff now.
Yep.
I think
But the thing that bugs me is I know a few Tesla owners all talk, full self-driving. It's it's you're mad if you don't get full self-driving. It's like, it's still not that useful at the moment.
No.
It's okay, but it's not. They think it's done and dusted. That's the thing I have a problem with, is that they think, it's done, and Tesla's done full self-driving. You can buy it. You can pay the $7,000 package and you've got full self-driving. It's like,
But at least they can update it over the air when they improve it, which a lot of the other car companies can't even do that yet.
No.
I've got to take my Kona into the dealer just to get some bloody software updates that chug through a 0.5 megabit CAN bus through the OBD thing. It takes like 4 hours to do 4 software updates.
In some aspects, I kind of like that. I like my car not phoning, but I like my car just being a car.
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons. I think but to be able to do updates, even if it's fully controlled by even if they, I could just plug an SD card into the head unit to do an update.
Right? That'd be nice.
There's still a very old school mentality in a lot of car dealers that the fact that my dealer wouldn't even send me out this bloody boot to stick over the.
So Mike, when you take your car in, do you go when you take your car in and they're like updating the firmware, do you like slip in a conversation? You're like, well, you wouldn't download a car. Come on.
But we're talking car dealers here. They wouldn't.
I know they wouldn't catch it, but it would be funny to like keep saying it until like they're like, what the hell are you saying?
Mine came with lifetime map updates, right? But the map updates have to be done at the service, right? Of course, EVs, you hardly ever get them serviced like once a year. It's like, so I can't just download the map updates and do it myself.
The stupid thing is Hyundai, I think in Canada and USA you can.
Oh, really?
Which is really annoying. Yes, you can.
You can do it, you can plug it into the USB port or something?
Yeah, well, mine's got an SD card slot under the head unit, and in the US, you can just download the stuff onto an SD card, plug it in, and away it goes.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I haven't looked. Really? Is it like hidden under the bottom, or is it?
I don't know if the Ionics are the same or not, but all the maps are actually on an SD card.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. I'll have a good look.
They put the SD card slot in the correct place, which is the glove box, and then that's where you guys put the wheel. So so it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. So I find that is your built-in mapping system actually useful? I find mine's pretty hopeless.
It's brilliant. It's really good.
Oh no, I find mine's and the charges. How about when it tells you the charging stations? Mine is literally useless.
Yeah, it's the last software update. At least you can now filter it to only show rapid DC chargers.
Right.
But the information is not very current. It will show the chargers that have been there for a long time, but
mine does not show the biggest car fast charging fast charging network in the country. It doesn't even show it. It doesn't. Your nearest one. I drove up to Newcastle, which is like 150 k's up the coast. Right. And it's like, I know there's I used one. I did a video using one up there, and it's like, it says your nearest fast charging station is Sydney. It's like bullshit. It's useless.
I think that varies by country. I think in the UK it's supplied by TomTom, but also sometimes it just doesn't connect. With mine was the only one that didn't have the telematics, so I've actually got a Wi-Fi to like GSM bridge thing, so can also do it through the phone. The head unit needs a connection to Wi-Fi to get live information, but the actual Satnav stuff works fine. It sometimes takes you down slightly odd routes, but I actually prefer that to using the phone because it's just there in front of you on a nice big screen with a nice user interface.
Yep.
But no, it works fine, apart from the charging points.
Apparently the app's terrible, isn't it? Isn't the Hyundai? Everyone complains about the Hyundai.
Yeah,
I
don't know. I've not used it. I don't have any particular need for it.
I haven't used it either. But everyone says, don't even bother downloading it. It's pointless.
Yeah.
So they need a bit of refinement there, I suspect.
Yeah.
Anyway, poor old Chris is probably getting bored of our EV rantings.
I mean, I'm just sitting here. It's interesting to hear about. I mean, it's just a little left out. I drive about once per week, guys. So
that's the thing with electric cars. There's so much. As an owner, there's so much to talk about. Whereas with a petrol car, unless you're a real petrol head, I bored out my cylinders to like stuff like. But nobody like Joe Average is not talking about their car.
Car Talk has 4 million listeners still, and one of them is dead. So I'm just saying there is some interest out there. It may not be very concurrent with electronics people.
Yeah, I think it's just starting to tip over from the enthusiast to the more mainstream.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Person, but I think that's where things like the issues with rapid chargers. For example, the classic one of people sitting on a rapid charger charging to 100%, which makes no sense because the charge rate goes down so much. If you've got a long trip, it's quicker to charge to 80% and then drive to the next charger.
Yeah, and then drive off. Yeah.
But a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, they have to put in like people control, right? This becomes a capacity problem, and it's just tough because you have to start
it's called icing. If you've been iced, it means that either a petrol car is taking up an internal combustion car, that's where the term comes from, ice, is actually taking up an EV car spot, or you can get iced by an EV owner where they think they're entitled to park their EV there and not charge it. Because it's an EV spot. It's like, no, that's bad etiquette.
Do you guys meet on the weekend and talk about all your cool things?
There's an app. I don't know if you there's an app we have with all the local charge, and people take photos of other cars, and this car's been here for half an hour, and I can't, and they like out them. It's great.
One thing that's just opened a couple of weeks ago near us is the first electric forecourts, they call it.
Yes, I saw that. That's huge.
Yeah, it's got like 8 350 kilowatt chargers. It's GridServe. And
it's enormous. I saw a tour of that. Wow, and it's got a big showroom. They'll actually loan you out EVs. It's like a big showroom thing, isn't it?
They've got a few sort of business models. They've got a 6 megawatt hour on-site battery. So part of their business model is selling the use of that battery to the grid for grid balancing. And doing the charging, and it's like a car service station.
That's novel.
So on, I think they say they're planning 100 locations in the UK. Probably not as big as that one, but that's their
right. So they could just make money from selling grid storage. Really?
I think it'll be a while before rapid charger companies can make money just from the charging.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think that might ever be possible. You've got to make money some other way. I think
difficult one.
Yeah.
And so this is like a station effectively. It's like a
Imagine a gas station, but we're just chargers and no petrol
sure,
pumps.
okay. Yeah, I mean, like gas stations, petrol stations, they make all their money on the soda anyways, right? So you just got to make a nice lounge and.
But it's got like it's a large building. It's got like a luxurious. You can go sit on the lounges in the luxurious rooms, and they've even got EV cars that you can trial. So you go there and you can actually loan one.
So they're doing like all the
fully
upsells.
charged.
Yeah,
so it's like a leasing thing. They've also got like bookable meeting rooms, for example.
Right. Wow. Like making money.
It's interesting how that might change kind of like social structures and like if there's like a built-in charge time you have to do.
What do you do when your car's charging? Can you get money out of people?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Because the problem is it will never be as fast as filling up a petrol tank. Because I actually timed it. People asked me to do we were debating this on the EV blog forum. So I went, bugger it. Next time I'm going to the petrol station, I'm going to check. This is before I had my EV. I actually timed it. And it was 3 minutes from when I parked up to the pump, filled up my car from 0 to full, and I cleaned my window and cleaned my windscreen and everything. Walked inside, paid, came back out. It was 3 minutes before I drove.
You pay
from
inside?
when I drove
That's
in
so
to
weird.
drive off. And that gives me 500 to 600 kilometers of range in 3 minutes. And I cleaned my windows and got some snacks from the servo. Like, EVs will never be that quick and convenient. I just don't see it.
No, that's true, and people say, but hydrogen, no, not for cars.
No, that's what's your take on hydrogen?
The efficiency is terrible.
Yep.
The infrastructure will never be,
it's never going to
the cost of the infrastructure, and you can't charge at home.
Yeah,
so,
but the hydrogen aficionado saying, we have these portable ones you can install in your house, like these hydrogen tanks you can put on the outside. They're serious. I mean, they're serious. They still think
all
it's
you
gonna
need
work.
is to put some, drop your electrical leads into some water and then get a collection tank above it. You're good.
There might be a few, like the occasional niche, like say someone running a truck depot, so they can fill them all centrally and whatever, but it's just no. The efficiency it's something like 30%, energy to wheel through hydrogen versus 70% or something with EVs. It's just that alone just knocks it out.
Yep. And the fact that you can't do it at home unless you have these high pressure bloody tanks strapped to the side of your house.
I think people who haven't had an EV just don't appreciate the whole charge at home. That is one of the biggest advantages.
It's just it's just something you just don't have to worry about. Although if I'm going on a trip, I've got a plan. I'm going on a long trip up the mountains tomorrow. I need to make sure it's 80-90% charged. But apart from that, it's not hard to put a little bit of thought into it.
No, it does need slightly more planning. But the savings depend a lot on how much electricity costs in your country. If you can't charge at home and have to use public chargers and they're not free, then it's still cheaper than petrol, but not that much. Certainly in the UK.
Yeah.
But the charge at home, it's literally in the UK with an overnight tariff, you're talking something like 1.5p pennies per mile. Which is, it's just so cheap
it's
for
crazy.
the running cost. And if you do a decent, if you do enough mileage, I think it's probably the sort of thing, the ideal situation is where you're doing, a fair amount of mileage every day, but not so much really, really long trips so that you maximize the use of charging at home.
Yeah. Yeah, like a long commute or something like that versus like you're going back and forth to a...
And that's before you start looking at the various tax incentives. Like, in the UK, there's like no road tax, there's no London congestion charge, there's quite a lot of other towns and cities are putting fairly major incentives in, which, they might not last forever, but for the moment, they're very valuable. And it's in some cases, it's just a no-brainer.
Yeah. Speaking about homes, Mike, have you seen any change this year? Your experiences with the change in the community about working from home and, big businesses downsizing because half their employees are now working from home permanently. Have you seen
I think one of the things this situation has shown is that, working from home can work. And I think a lot of people, it's accelerated what was probably going to happen anyway.
But it may not have. It probably needed this sort of kick in the guts, didn't it?
Right. To change actual policy and stuff like that, you mean?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be wanting to invest in commercial real estate anytime soon. That's for sure.
Want to buy a WeWork? Fire sale prices.
Yeah.
Not big ones. I find there's still market for the small ones because but everyone's down.
Yeah.
A lot of them are downsizing. So
Yeah. I think co-working spaces might actually do better in general if people are going to keep doing remote. But
weren't they dying? The whole WeWork thing.
Yeah, but I mean, so like I think WeWork will, WeWork is totally oversold or overbought, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But I think that when things do come back, if you imagine like you get another year of companies saying like, yeah, you can work from home, but people are like, I haven't seen anyone for a year. I would really love to be near other people.
Right.
Like that's. I've actually been doing this really interesting kind of weird thing. It's called Cave Day. Have you guys ever heard of Cave Day?
No.
Basically, it's you basically get on a Zoom call with a bunch of other people and you talk about what you're going to work on, and then you just like literally have a Zoom call with your webcam on, and you're just working in front of other people. And like it sounds super dumb, but I'll tell you what, I bill almost twice as much because like just like the social, the weird part of your brain, like the social pressure. I've been billing and doing so much more work, and like today I did like 3 hours straight of like firmware, which for me is torture, but like I just was able to get through it because I had committed to doing it, and I don't know. It's crazy. It's like a weird brain hack, and it might not work for everyone, but it's sure working for me. I don't know why. So
writing firmware with other people watching you.
What's that?
Yeah, but who's going to be watching you? They can't be productive and watch you, and vice versa.
No, it's just like out of the corner of my eye, I see them also in front of their camera, and it's not like they're watching me. Like it's not like they're watching my code. I wouldn't let them do that anyways. But it's like they're just there on camera, and I'm on camera. It's like it's really
that doesn't work with engineers. Sorry, that's not gonna. No, engineers are.
Well, at least one engineer, Dave. No. It works. So, and I did this also with.
But you're a weird yank.
I did this with at least 6 other engineers as well. So.
Nah.
Okay. Well,
no thanks.
Maybe cave dwellers such as Dave won't be a thing. But
Mike,
no.
Yay or nay?
No, don't like working.
Right. Well, not for everyone. Not for everyone, guys. No. For me, it worked great. So.
Boy, we're at 2 hours, guys.
Yeah.
I think an hour of that was EVs.
It was.
Could we split the EVs out as a second show?
Yeah. Sorry, Chris.
I feel like maybe I should like cut in with the edit and be like, warning, the next 45 minutes will be about exclusively about EVs. But that's great. I think that people are interested in that stuff. I mean, I think a lot of people in our audience are at least thinking about it, right? And then it comes down to just the trade-offs and whether it makes sense.
You're doing it again, Chris. You're doing it again. You're going back there.
What?
EVs.
Oh, yeah. I'm just trying to justify what you've been talking about the whole time, Dave. Come on, like
you've been sucked back into the hole.
All right, never mind. We'll talk about it another time.
Is there anything else we need to absolutely cover? Otherwise,
I've got a very micro rant.
Oh yes, please.
Lattice Semiconductor.
Oh, what have they done?
They have made the software to use their really old CPLDs. Oh. You now have to pay for it, and it used to be free. It's I think something like $500 a year or something.
Huh.
So if I want to buy, I've
Who
used
does that?
People who need to pay for supporting engineers, I guess.
My guess is they are having to pay. When you compile a PLD, you get so many copyright notices. They are probably having to pay someone for some of the things they include in that tool chain. So that's my guess. Yeah. But it means I've only used that. You had two designs with those devices in it. But it basically means that if I need to make any changes to those, I have to pay $500, which obviously I'll just charge to my client. But it's a bit.
$500 just for the software though, not for like not per change.
Yeah, right? No, for the software for a year's license.
Yeah.
I don't see that catching on.
I think they're trying to make it go away, but
I don't see. Can you see any other manufacturers going, oh wow, Lattice got away with it?
I doubt
well, there's a bit of kerfuffle on the amp hour, but that was about it.
I can't see they're actually doing it for a profit, but maybe they're just trying to make the old products go away somehow. I don't know.
I bet they're using it as a lever to get people to. I mean, there is new stuff, right? I mean, like there are upgrade paths, but people probably aren't taking them because.
But not with CPLDs. CPLDs are the whole thing is they're a simple device that's good enough for the job, and their design probably hasn't changed in the last 10 years.
Right. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
20.
Right, but they want to sell bigger, better FPGAs. Smaller.
So can you still buy like a 16 V8 and stuff like that?
This is for the yes, you can, but this is for the next ones up. Like the 72 macrocell devices, that sort of scale.
Yeah, right.
They're not quite big enough for an FPGA, or I want a small pin count type devices.
Or you want better timing and stuff like that, because the FPGAs, their routing's a bit more loosey-goosey than the, let's just say, than the CPLDs. So,
it's predictable.
They're a bit more predictable. Yes.
Well, the FPGAs are probably way faster, but if you don't need the speed, I think it's more just about you want a simple, low-complexity device without too many pins.
Yep. Pin count's always my bugbear. It's like, geez, I need an FPGA, but I only want 20 pins. Like, holy shit, why do I have to buy a 500-pin device to get this macro cell count? Bastards.
Yeah.
I'm sure we were ranting about that a decade ago on the first amp hour.
I think we were, definitely.
Still,
We will be having on, so while Dave's going to be on holiday starting next week, I think.
Yes, on the end of weekish.
So we are going to be talking with a couple of guests. One of them is Brian Faith from one of the newer FPGA companies. So they're the ones who did the open tool chain. So they basically, as a company, they said, hey, we're going to use the, Riosis and all the open tool chain stuff. So I'll try and post a question. It's Quick Logic. Sorry. So Quick Logic does, they basically are doing like a fully open tool chain, which is super cool. So yeah.
That's good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike, for joining us.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Have a good new year.
Yeah, thanks, man.
It can't be worse than this year. Yeah.
2021, I'm sure.
2021 by the time everyone hears this. Yeah, and it'll all be over. Don't worry. It's 2021.
Right. Well, guys, there's still time. Actually, between when we recorded this and 2021, there may have been an asteroid strike. So.
I was about to say asteroid strike. Yep, that's the only thing left for 2020, right? Or a big solar storm.
Right.
And then our EVs don't drive anymore because we just got only the petrol cars work anymore. the real old ones.
Yeah, they did just have a big earthquake in Eastern Europe somewhere, I think. But,
There's still time. Well, it's been real then, guys. It's been real.
Catch you next time.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers.
You just finished listening to this episode, and that means you made it to 2021. Our past, current, and future episodes are only made possible by our patrons. Make this the year, become a part of the club, and hang out all throughout the year with other patrons at patreon.com/theamphour. A special thanks today to our corporate sponsor, Bino.